I'll come back to why I called the talk Life Between Systems, which I think is really what we need to think about, because what we want to do with open data, open government in general, is to create spaces for life. And, well, we build systems, me included, and we tend to focus on the systems. Well, that happens when you build systems, and we actually want to focus on the life between the systems, and that's a nice parallel. So, just so you know who you're looking at, this is me. I have a master's in information studies and some other stuff. Did my PhD at the computer science department with Lego, looking into how the mobile phones were changing the way tween girls play. Lego weren't interested, they are now. And now I'm professor at the University of Aarhus, coordinating all the smart city activities. So not just technology, but business, health, you name it. And I do some stuff by myself as well. So that's probably why I'm here. I'm part of some centers. So the smart cities, we have a center called Digital Urban Living. That's a great place if you get the chance to come by CAVI, Advanced Visualization and Interaction. Really fun. And now we do this participatory IT thing. So participatory IT is at the core of what I want to talk about here. We also put out a book. It's in Danish, so I'm just going to prove that we put it out. Right. So the life between the systems. I think that's what I have been doing for the last at least decade. But there was a guy who did that before. Do you know this guy? Anybody knows this guy? Jan Gehl. He's a Danish architect. And he wrote the famous book, Life Between Buildings, using public space. He was banned from the School of Architecture for not looking at the buildings, but the life between the buildings. See, this was in the 60s, so the high modernist era, when you put up, the large urban plans with, efficient housing and so on. And actually, his wife suggested to him, "Hey, look, what's the kind of life that you're producing, conditions for here?" And then he started looking into how people were living in these, great places. And one of the things he found out was that if you have kids, you tend not to want to live above the 5th floor. Why? Because you cannot see them playing down there. So it's not just about putting people into a house and have them feel, safe from weather and, have a place to sleep and eat and so on. There's a lot of context that you have to consider. And I think it was really a great talk we heard just before this one, because the kind of thought that you have put into how people use your systems rings very much, along these lines. And I'm sad to say that we're really bad here in Denmark on this, as you would have gathered from the people who came up here later. I'll work a little on that. So this is the inspiration. So let's not look actually too much on the systems. Yeah, sure, they need to be there, but let's look at what are the conditions for life that we create. How are the conditions for life that we create using open data? It's a big problem, because like you said, what's open data? That's a lot of things. So from my perspective, I have a bit broader approach. It's not just about the open data. It's within this smart cities challenge, which is basically the challenge of everything, because what's not in a city, what's not connected to a city somehow, everything. Okay. So I come from this context. The open data must work to some purpose, somewhere to some people. Right. Should be obvious. That's not the conclusion you would get to if you look at the Danish systems. And just to be very clear, this is not a new thing. This is sort of a timeline. You don't have to be able to read it, but it goes from the 60s and up until the present day. And we've had all kinds of cities. They weren't called smart cities. Called all kinds of things. Technology, great, intelligent, smart things. But they were essentially about how we could, do things better. We tried again and again and again and again. And people have actually been very good at this for a long time. So one of the first rethinkings of a city based on a new kind of infrastructure was the Futurama done by GM, General Motors, in New York during the World Fair in '39. And it was a vision of a city that was remodeled around this fabulous infrastructure called the automobile. And it was really, really well done. This is some decades later where GM made another iteration on this. But what's interesting about this picture, I think, is actually not the car. It's the fact that mommy and the girl are buying the groceries. Why not the guy? Why? I mean, we don't have these cars. Actually, they look a lot like the Ellet. If any Danes are here, the first really popular electrical car. So we may in fact say that we have these cars that didn't become popular. But what I see when I see this picture is that I see a lot of stereotypes, cultural stereotypes. I'm not going to bore you with cultural stereotypes, but just to say, one thing is getting the technology out there. Another thing is to have it, support a certain kind of culture. And it wasn't just the car, all kinds of infrastructures for life. This is a sort of algorithmic way of building. It's from 67. You can still see it in Montreal. Anybody from Canada here? Nope. Well, it's an impressive building and housing project. All the houses, all the cells are just alike. And then they have been put in nice ways. Except in 67, you didn't have that much dynamics you could work with. Think what you could do with, really interesting robotics and stuff today. The problem about many of these visions for future cities or future societies is that they've been sort of spectacular. What you deal with, I think you said that was like the everyday hassle. These aren't solving everyday hassle. They're spectacular. They're made to look great and yay, let's get there. We want to build this. They were put on show. And that was the case in 39, and it's still the case when you come to see many of these infrastructure visions. Been to South Korea, anyone? Yeah? Have you visited the Songdo, the greenfield city that was built? Right. It's very much a spectacle. It's a showcase, and it's not very lively. It's not like a city that you would go to as a tourist. So the problem is that many of these visions, they actually don't get to what's important for people. Yes, they build fantastic infrastructures, but they miss the whole point. There's a science fiction writer called, sorry, I hope I didn't blind anyone with a laser. Frederick Pohl, he just died, unfortunately. But he said, a good science fiction story should be able to predict not the automobile, but the traffic jam. And I think we can see some parallels to that when we today deploy systems. We can see a lot of visions about, oh wow, great systems, single sign-on, yeah. But they forgot to think about the life that those systems created. The interesting part is that even back in the 50s, they were also pretty good at spotting the traffic jam. Not always the technology companies, that's still the case, but other people. So let's have an example here of a very modern situation with a lot of complications. It's a wonderful film, and Tati, of course, he actually also made traffic, so he envisaged this cacophony of systems that we're having now. I think that's a pretty good example of what's happening when we go online. Try to use these awful systems. And I'm going to show you a few Danish systems just to scare everyone. You know them. All the Danes will laugh and look down and say, oh, man. So we have single sign-on tied to your social security number and incidentally to your DNA as well. Works for us. That's the NEM ID. It should be called Bank ID. Now it's being sold off to whoever. Digital Post, that's the monopoly email infrastructure. That's next year becoming mandatory for speaking to authorities. Let's look at IC4. If you have you been to Godsbanen? Nice venue just around the corner. Really, the old freight train yard. You can go, a really wonderful cultural production place. Now go up on the tip like standing, in Titanic, like you stand on tip. You can just see out, and what you can see is the IC4 graveyard. It's all the fabulous next generation diesel trains that we bought from, the Italians that couldn't really make. Actually, they could make some great trains, and they were designed by the guy who made Ferraris and so on. And they could also connect them, and they were kind of nice. But the software to hook them up didn't work. So actually, they're grounded. They're not supposed to, go. Really interesting how not to do it. So this is how you log on, just for you poor souls who know it and don't know it. There's a wonderful Java applet that, of course, doesn't work on mobile or anything. An applet with all kinds of trickery to make it run. So when you actually get inside, this is Digital Post. This is mine. And if you go to your inbox, which, of course, is not what is shown when you enter, you see this. And I'm not stupid with systems, and it took me a while to figure out how to actually create a message. So this is the new post. That's how you create a message. No way making it easy like a big nice button for create a new. Okay, so just to say that we would want you to come and do some systems for us, please. The model clearly doesn't work. So like Ferrigi from Apple said recently. I'll bash Apple later. So the interesting thing is, as we saw, actually the good system is a smart city. All the good things that we could have dreamed about. They're already here. I mean, they're in Hawaii, and maybe someday they'll come to us too. But they're here in different ways, and it's not, I chose a mobile phone. Well, actually, Chris Speed did. But the mobile phone is here for a reason, because many of the services that are really, really perceived as helpful, they're based on mobile. And I was really happy to see you talking about, simple things like texting and SMS services, because that's how you reach directly to where people are in their lives. So the interesting thing is that people will happily buy, equipment, digital equipment, to instrument the smart city out of their own pocket for hundreds of dollars. They'd happily do that, but they hate the systems that government make. How's that so? I mean, we have these systems that work really nicely. You all know TripAdvisor. By the way, Aarhus is on the front page of TripAdvisor if you have the city guides. That's another story how we end up there. Banking slowly coming to the Western world. I mean, after Africa and Japan, there's a really nice texting service for stamps for old snail mail, but it just works. I mean, you just write one word and send it to 1919. Bam! You get a code back. You write it on the envelope and dump it. Works. That's smart cities. Those are smart systems, and those are the ones that. And I mean, that's exactly the thinking that you have that we would like to see. So my argument is that we actually know both what the bad systems are and the good systems are. Now, then the problem is not anymore how to create a smart city, because we know should be these nice systems. The problem then becomes, what kind of city do we want? And that's sort of a harder problem. Do you know about wicked problems? Yeah, so the 10 sort of characteristics of a very wicked problem, like you don't know when you've solved it and stuff like that. Creating a city is a wicked problem, obviously. So, to Dane, the good city. What's the good city? Now we're a bit back to Jan Gehl and creating, life between the buildings. And so my first conclusion that I would like to share with you to carry on for the rest of the talk is that this smart city, and that includes open data, that's first and foremost actually a cultural and organizational transition. And I think looking from the previous presentation, that carries pretty well. I mean, yes, we can build the systems when we have the right people to work with, both internally in our in our organization and in our partners. And it's very much a kind of thinking about how we actually want to go about and create nice societies. So we look more about the context for the systems than the actual systems, because we are system makers, we're confident we can build them. So it's not just totally haphazard what has happened. There's actually a bit of structure to this development. There are 3 phases, just to be brief. And the first one is where many of these efforts have been clustered around, a physical place. So you build a smart part of town where you put all the tech companies. The next phase is where you build it up around an entire sector. That could be energy, could be healthcare, could be education. So it's not just you have a lot of places where this plays out. It's tied to all the intricacies of the sector. And at the moment, many cities and regions and countries that are forward-thinking, they're in this phase. They're pretty good ties within the sectors. But the last one, actually going across the silos, is super different. I don't think you talked too much about how you then manage the cross-silo dissemination of good practices and so on, but it's super hard because so much is tied to the culture of a department. Even I'm at the university, and it's horrible. So we would really like to see how we can take this further in a way that's not just making efficient cities, but it's actually creating cities where those who live there feel that they are part of building it. I mean, I'm from the participatory IT center, so wow, what do you know? City, it's Greek. I have a degree in Greek. I get to use it like once every year. City in Greek means not just the space and the building. It means the people. I mean, we the people. When you're a citizen, what is it? Well, you have the obligation to defend your city. It also means that you are part of the city. And I mean, the conclusion is that whenever you speak about cities, it's not just a generic city. It's actually, I mean, it soon gets very political. I mean, look at the US today. It's not just about, doing things right. It's about where you want to go. Now, just 2 simple examples of how the way we design technology embeds certain political values. I mean, and this is, of course, from Rio. It's the IBM Control Center. I spoke on Thursday. I keynoted side by side with Rick Robinson from IBM, who was probably not, seeing this as the perfect example of how IBM would do it everywhere, but there was a specific context in Rio. But it's just to say that this is, well, for one thing, it's not very participatory. It's rather one-way kind of thing. Now let's look just outside of these buildings. Another place in Rio, it's a favela, a poor part of town called Rocinha. It has the population of the same size as Aarhus, so 250,000, all living in less than 1 square kilometer. It's pretty dense. It's totally open. So, sorry. The sewer is open, the garbage, if you want to get rid of something, you just do that. Even electricity. If you want power, you get it. Also, in terms of, information, many of the houses, they have a number on them. Like we do, like 10 or 15 or 32. The difference is that in Rocinha, the numbers don't mean anything, apart from the fact that they're nice to have. So you can choose your own number. It's open, in the wildest sense of the word, but it's not necessarily a place you would want to live. Actually, they're reluctant to getting more structured because then have to pay for the power and stuff like that. It is truly, participatory. You can use the city. You can use what's around you. You're allowed to do that. Well, there are people you have to ask, but so these are 2 extremes, you could say. And I think what they are telling us is that, to paraphrase the other quote, that it's super easy to do something digital. Yeah, sure, we can do that. Open is actually also very easy. We just open up, but we might not want to do that. Getting it right is what we want to do. So if we take these as sort of the outliers, sort of the super controlled, I don't think many cities would want to be designed by Steve Jobs. Probably be really cool, but also not very inclusive. Or the totally open bottom-up thingy. I mean, they're not really, for many of us, real options. So we need to figure out what's the style, what are the different things that we want to build with the systems we build. Of course, you put in your own whatever, where you're from. So I like to put to you, usually I have, clickers or SMS, you can vote while you watch this. But it would be great just, to raise your hands. There are 5 questions. So what's the primary motivation for throwing out, you can say, open data or the smart city solutions? And here they are. Is it to have good tech solutions? It's to, be more sustainable, better about the environment. It's about creating ownership, better economy, efficiency. It's the quality of life. So I want to see some hands. How many think that having tech solutions out there is the primary motivation for doing these things from your perspective? What? Well, I'm not counting, but so if you have 2, then no one? Oh, that's actually like the politicians last week. Environmental issues? Couple of hands, right? Ownership? Right? A little more. Economy? Bettering the economy? About the same as ownership, I'd say. Hi, Mikael. It's been a while. Quality of life? Everyone. Jan Gehl won. The point is that that's what you... So the politicians at the Danish Planning Association meeting, there were like 800 people, and a third were politicians, the rest were planners and urban developers. In that audience, everyone said either ownership or quality of life. So they go back into their cities, what happens? They have to talk to the IT department and the finance minister. And then something happens. It's really interesting that we all want to do this, but then something else happens. So that's really one of the basic issues. How come we have these visions, and then they go all digital, post and NemID? What happened? So to me, that's actually the real benefit if we can change something there. Okay, a bit back to the cities. This is the world population, and the red half are the ones who do not live in cities, they live outside cities. The 3 other sections are cities, blue, more than 10 million, so mega cities, green, between 1 and 10 million inhabitants, and the yellow one is cities with less than 1 million, which would include Aarhus. My point here is that often when we talk about solutions for cities, be it open data or whatever, we tend to focus on the mega cities, the Dhakas and the Tokyos of the world. But there are more of these. So actually it's interesting to figure out what works in Aarhus and other places, just saying. Now here, the next slide is the most compressed argument-wise that you will see in this presentation. This is how I see the main challenges and how the answers to these connect. So to me, I see the general problem we're facing is actually complexity. I think many would say, okay, so let's open up, let's break it up, smaller system, more accessible. Yeah, right, but then comes the next question, how open, and open how? Then that leads to a discussion about the rights we need to implement. We talk, well, the tech community often talk about rights, but the politicians, they don't get it, and then something else happens. And actually, as soon as you go into the sector, be it energy or healthcare or education or whatever, cultural scene, then there's a disconnect. People talk in different languages. So it's really difficult to translate through this. And I would say that what we need to get out of this stalemate, yes, we want livable cities. Whoa, then we talk about IT budget. That is to create a new kind of partnerships. And open data is very much embedded in this. That was it. So To give you a quick overview of what's happening in Denmark, which I think would be interesting here because they're quite different. It'll be a quick rundown. I'm coordinating together with the Urban Housing and Rural Affairs Ministry, the Danish Smart City Network. And incidentally, we have strong involvement from all 5 regions in Denmark. And I know the Aarhus work better because I was one of the co-founders of this Smart Aarhus initiative. So it's exactly trying to build these partnerships. It's built on, you could say, 2 developmental tracks. One is more strategic and actually not so well funded. Actually not really funded. And then there's a project one, and that's much more, that's like the Internet Week Aarhus, which you will soon, I think, hear more about. It's about the open data portal that's being launched and so on. So we try to separate the strategic thinking from the implementation and so on. It's based on a model called top-up, which is the best of top-down and bottom-up. And it's actually marketed as a Scandinavian third way. This is how it looks. It's available online if you want to see it. And the purpose is not to build this new society, but actually to coordinate and make sure that these disconnects are connected. So this top-up is basically everyone and his mother, and I really mean that. We had a lot of work groups working. Some of these work groups never went anywhere, and some became really, the open data actually became quite big. So just to show that we actually have things on open data. So it's built on the CCAN2 platform. It's a distributed platform. You can have your own server. So university has a server, the city has a server, the region has a server. I mean, you can just build the private companies. The Alexandra Institute has a server. And they just exchange data, right? Of course, a small business, they would, or a small organization, an NGO, for instance, they would not want to host a server. So the city offers that as sort of public space, digital public space. Yeah, put it here. Don't take responsible for it. You need to pick a license and so on, but it's offered, please. Or if you're the region, you have healthcare data. Don't put that out, right? So you have your own server and you just open up, on a need to share basis. This interfaces with the initiative in Copenhagen, other cities, and the Danish sort of public drive for open data. I think that's how these things should be done. And it's not just, little things like, let's put this totally useless data online. There's a 3D map of Aarhus, all the kind of stuff that you used to pay for. But it's us also, this kind of thinking, this kind of distributed scalable architecture thinking is also being built into how the things like the metering in the district heating system is working. It's not totally integrated yet at all, but it's the same kind of thinking. So when there's a tender out for power metering in houses and centrally and all this infrastructure stuff, a lot of effort is created both on the instrumentation side, so the sensor side, and the user interface side, whether it's users in their own homes or it's operators, to have many options. So there's an open infrastructure where you, as a business, you can go for a tender and you can actually make a business, but still the city has a flexible infrastructure. Really nice, I think. So rethinking the city. And Aarhus is basically seeing that this new part of organization is the new thing, not the stuff. Anybody could do a data portal. And maybe we can even do it as nicely as they do in Hawaii. Sorry. It's what happens with the people around it. There's even a label you can slap on your stuff if you think you want to show you from Aarhus. Copenhagen, that was an interesting development following the talks there. They have a big smart city initiative also, quite well coordinated, and they're focusing now, interestingly, on open data. And you can go online and see what the Copenhagen Connecting thing is all about, and it'll be scaled up considerably over the coming periods. In Aalborg, just north of here, there's a strong city-university cooperation, which is sort of central to many of the successful initiatives anywhere you look. And I mean, in Aalborg, they did the GSM standard, right? They know how to do hard infrastructure really well. But they're also focusing on the soft infrastructure side. Kalundborg, that's a small city on Zealand. It uses 1/10 of the Danish energy, 10%. So of course they focus on demonstrating clean tech and how that folds into, making city. Vejle, a small city south of Aarhus, they call it smart city in eye height, or the very citizen near thing. And actually that initiative grew out of the Knowledge Center for Integration. So the people who had to accommodate people who are totally foreign to Danish culture, they built some wonderful mobile applications and I mean technical services to reach these people. So the point is that you don't know where in a city this starts. It doesn't have to be in the IT department where everybody knows about Drupal and open data. It could be in the integration services. The point is you need somehow to connect all these potential fertile beds for smart city development, or stupid term, but where good things happen. Yeah. How many in here are Danish? Okay, the other way around, how many are not? Okay, so interesting. Almost 50-50. So if we take this together, actually, the informal organization seems to be a key to where things are happening. So where an organization allows for sort of in-between space where it isn't totally formalized and it isn't totally, random and favela style. That seems to be a fertile way to go about. Okay, so agile doesn't work for top management, we heard, right? And that's sort of the point about top up. We need both. It's tied to the overall strategic goals of a city. Of course, open data doesn't change the overall goals of a city. Of course, it doesn't. It's focused on partnerships. And just to iterate, actually, the actual instruments, we can build them. The problem is that open data, open big data, open government, Internet of Things, clean tech, they don't create great cities. They don't create great societies in and of themselves. It's what you do with them. That also means that many of these indicator models of how smart cities are, how prepared they are, which includes openness of data and so on, they cannot be used to actually act on. We like this one because 3 Danish cities are in top 5. It's European middle-sized cities or something, but they're useless in making it. You all know these structural models? Well, maybe you just forget them because you cannot create anything from them. It's just a dissection of what's already there. Now what we need is maturity and phase models so that we can benchmark how far are we from what we want to achieve. And a few good models, I think, are starting to appear. So what's actually looks like the most places that are successful in using many of these technologies and rethinking cities in light of technology development is actually looking like the speedboats are much more efficient than the supertankers. I mean, a speedboat can then turn into a supertanker, but it's much easier to identify what's driving this and where we want to go. The problem is, of course, that is also in itself a complex organization and exercise to have, internal and regional and national and all kinds of, follow what's going on. But still, if you have motivated people that are allowed to work on good stuff, they will fill out the gaps. Okay, now comes the second most condensed argument-wise slide in the talk. This one. These are my proposition for the 5 formats of these smart city solutions or things. And the point is actually that only the first one is actual tools and systems. That would include open data. The practice around them, the partnerships you need to create them, the governance models and the guides meaning people, physical people who can go out and say, oh no, you don't have to you do like that. Those 4 are much more important than that one. Not to say we shouldn't be good at building systems, of course we should. So, back to open data. A few slides in Danish, but I really like the graphics, I'm sure you can see them. This is looking at the problem from the government side. This is how it looks. Yes, we know technology is, driving the development, and we're not really following, at least not in Denmark. Okay, so we open up. We have this great digital city. What do you want to do with it? This is government. Yeah, we want to. Where do you want us to stick it? They don't. I mean, it's really hard being in that position. I'm sure we all met people who want to do it, but what? So many of these systems are very good at pushing out data, but how do we make this a loop so that people can participate and contribute? And then there's the whole value thing. Sorry, Google, but so this is Scandinavia. Bless you. This is Scandinavia. We have a sense of community, a sense of society that we would actually, probably most of us, like to retain. So we cannot just put everything in the cloud and forget. Something has to be done. And first and foremost, how do you react on this feeling that you have to do something? That's looking at it from the government side. Many are, enlightened and know how to do things, but the broad picture is it's really hard to act even if you want to. Now there's the industry perspective on the data economy. And you all know the sad story. There isn't one. This is Intel, Ken Anderson, and there's profit for companies, but that doesn't create a data economy. You all seen these, billions and billions of euros and dollars, and yay, McKinsey, Accenture, we're gonna make a lot of, yes, sure, because, there's technology in everything, so of course, data and open data will be part of the economy, but for the moment, it's not. It's not a coherent concept. It's just not there. Just to make sure that we agree on that. So what can we do? What do we have actually in our hands? Well, we have this thing called open data. Now the problem is, it's not just data. It's different kinds of data, like you also talked about. Some of the data is, really helpful. So like mapping data, so things that are readily available to our hands to do good stuff with. And it's out there. But it's certainly not all the data, and it's certainly not all the data that's easy to put out there because, this could be neutral, but in a way ugly because it's this great data, it's gold under your pillow. But it's really just exhaust from the systems. It's there, and there's no business case on freeing this data. Why should a metering company use a lot of resources on opening up for the metering data? They were told, it's gold mine. Yeah, it's the new economy. Okay, so where's my business model? It's not there. Okay, so it's not being opened. So that's the ugly part of the neutral, but it's really just the who cares data. We don't know. There's no incentive to put it out. And then there's the bad data. Depends on whose perspective. That could be, disrupting a business. Making a web service that makes something transparent. It could be, revealing government practices being bad or something. So that's bad for some people, it's good for some other people, but as long as it's bad for the people who have to make the decision to open the data, it's maybe not gonna happen really quickly and in a well-funded and nice manner. It'll be sort of really get low priority. Thanks to Ben Hammersley for devising this spectrum. So whenever we look at data, of course, we need to look at what kind of data and who wants it out. You remember the speedboat? Who's on board and where do you want to go? Think about, so what's the agenda here? Actually, on the open data portal in Aarhus, we had the taxi bills of the local authorities, politicians. That was yanked pretty quickly. I'm not sure it's up yet. It's publicly available, but it wasn't like the prime showcase. Interesting. So, what can you do with open data? This is City Hall. Maybe you've seen it. It's just out there. And just for the architecture ones, this is not cement. It's really, really nice stone up from Norway, please. It's a modernistic, wonder piece. Walk inside, it's great. Now, what we did was something called City Bug Report. Basically, you should be able to file a bug report on anything. I mean, not just a hole in the street, but literally anything. And here's everything in the city, all departments, and you just, something's wrong. My son's school isn't working well, blah, blah, blah. One interface, how hard can it be? And we wanted to show that, and we actually did show how the interaction with the city, based on the public records of emails and letters going back and forth, how efficiently they were handled, historical data, on frickin' City Hall. And again, this is super easy. No, it's not super easy. It costs a lot of time, resources, less. Maybe if you're in this room, I mean, he was the manager of putting up all the LEDs, 5,500. It was a lot of work, but it was relatively easy. It's not a complex task. Now, the complex task was to get permission to do it. Actually, we could do that because of the Smart Aarhus partnership. But then came the concerned phone calls. Oh, you're revealing. I mean, that's the real beauty of a prototype like this. Not a prototype, but a prototype to show, hey, it's no problem. We can just do it. You want a simple interface to reporting anything in the city? Yeah, here it is. It's even built, tied into a nice open data structure, and we can give it, significance in public space. But actually, it's really hard to do. And it's not because of the technology. Aarhus just decided to introduce what's called track and trace. So whenever you say something to the city, you get a link back to your case. You don't yet, but that's the intention. And you get that link within 24 hours, and then you can track your case like you can track your Blu-ray from Amazon. This happened sort of out of this conversation. It's more complicated than that. But it's just to say that doing things can actually, even though we're not going out to solve stuff right away, it can open up a design space where we can then go in and these little speedboats can get some fuel. So that was a project. This is a real built thing. If you go down to the harbor front, it's the new library and citizen services center being built, costs a fortune, but it has all these things, media facades and open data help desk included. So the basic point, this is not about technology. Well, of course it's about technology, but it's first and foremost about changing culture and organization. You should always finish with some advice. So here's some advice in case you slept through the whole talk. Don't focus on the shiny solutions. Well, it's fun, but it's not what's really going to change anything. Be nimble. Build speedboats, not pyramids. Smart is not a feature, it's an experience. Well, you know it. Oh, it's supposed to be smart, then you kind of know it sucks. And please remember that a city is a rights-based partnership taking place somewhere. I do have one extra gear. So, open data. This picture is chock full of data. It's stored in a form called DNA. Now, if you want to know the life forms that are in this lake, up until recently, you will go out and you would count them, find them, take a sample of the water, and count how many of the little critters are. That's taking some time, right? Like, they do it for a couple of lakes every year just to know what's there. Who's swimming? Who's there? What can you do now? There's a little schnapps glass. Just take a sample, wherever, in the lake, and do a DNA analysis of it, and you'll know. Same thing. You'll know what DNA-based life forms live in this city. Not this city, that was my point. Lake. What happens, fast forward, when this sample can be analyzed, uploaded to the cloud, immediate response for cities? You have a shitload of open data. You have a shitload of knowledge about everything that's going on every corner in your city. Who is there, what they did. and you better be prepared for the kind of life you create between those systems. Thank you.